Hello, my name is Mrs. Patterson. I'm the librarian at Benjamin Davis Elementary School. In honor of Dr. Seuss's birthday on March the 2nd, I'm going to read you my favorite Dr. Seuss book. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? By Dr. Seuss. When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of Dries, and he sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten it yet. And I'm not going to sing because I don't sing well, but I will say this to you. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, when you feel sour and blue, when you start to get mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more, ever so much more, muchly, much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on the Bungle Bung Bridge. They're building across Boober Bay at Bum Ridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who are in it are troubled with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful a whole heaping lot for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Just suppose, for example, you lived in Gazette, got caught in that traffic on Zayat Highway 8. That looks like traffic in a big city, maybe Atlanta. Oh, suppose, just for instance, you lived in Gazer with your bedroom up here and your bathroom up there. That'd be a long way to walk. Suppose, just suppose, you are poor Herbie Hart, who has taken his thrumdibulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the gick or the gooer fits into the shruck or the schnuck or the schnooer. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his thrumdibulator apart. Think they work you too hard? Think of poor Allie Sard. He has to mow grass in his uncle's backyard, and it's quick-growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it, and all that his stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in the hay is the piffless pay of 2 dukeless a day. And Ollie can't live on such pitiful pay. So he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays in grooves. How lucky you are you don't live in his shoes. And poor Mr. Bix. Every morning at 6, poor Mr. Bix has his Borfin to fix. It doesn't seem fair, it just doesn't seem right, but his Borfin just seems to go schlump every night. It schlumps in a heap, sadly needing repair. Bix figures it's due to the local night air. It takes him all day to unschlump it, and then the night air comes back and it schlumps once again. So don't you feel blue. Don't get down in the dumps. You're lucky you don't have a Borfin that schlumps. Look at this thing. And while we're at it, consider the schlots, the crumple-horn, webbed-footed, green-bearded schlots, whose tail is entailed with unsolvable knots. If he isn't muchly more worse off than you, I'll eat my umbrella. That's just what I'll do. And you're lucky indeed you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you sit on a whammel. A whammel, you know, is a sort of a saddle held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, If your old whammelfaddle gets loose, I'm telling you, Ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I daughter. He has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in an INT factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at. Out west near Hotch Hotch, there's a Hotch Hotcher bee watcher. His job is to watch, is to keep both eyes on the lazy town bee. A bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched, and in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder. Not much. So then somebody said, our old bee watching man just isn't bee watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another Hotch Hotcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched the bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another Hotch Hotcher had to come in as a watcher. And today, all the Hotchers who live in Hotch Hotch are watching on watching the watcher who's watching the bee. You're not a Hotch watcher. You're lucky, you see. And how fortunate that you are not Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the past 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks how to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffing Poogle Horn players who have to parade down the Poogle Horn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Pooboken. It's awful how often their poogles get broken. And oh, just suppose you are poor Harry Haddo. Try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He doesn't have a shadow. He thinks that perhaps something's wrong with his giz, and I think that, by golly, there probably is. And the Brothers Bazoo, the poor Brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew like theirs happens to do. You think you're unlucky? I'm telling you, Ducky, some people are muchly, oh, ever so muchly, more unlucky than you. And suppose that you lived in that forest in France where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from the perilous pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe. You're a fortunate guy, and you ought to be shouting, how lucky am I? And speaking of plants, you should be greatly Gladys. You're not Farmer Falkenberg's 17th radish. If you count it over to the 17th, look what's right there. Earthworm's about to get that plant. And you're so lucky. You're not Gucky Gown, who lives by himself 90 miles out of town in the ruins of Ronk. Ronk is rather run down. And you're so lucky you're not a left sock, left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all of the things that you're not. Thank goodness you're not something someone forgot and left all alone in some punkerish place like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, oh, ever so much, so muchly, much more unlucky than you. Hello. This was a silly story, wasn't it? I want to go back over just a couple of things. I wanted us to enjoy the story, but now I want to make sure that we know a few things about this. The title was, Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are? Author, well, it says by Dr. Seuss, so he's the author. What do authors do? Authors write the words in a story. But since there's only one name, he is also the illustrator. So when it has just one name, he's the author and the illustrator. Let me show you a different book that we're not going to read. This one is 'Twas the Fright Before Christmas. It says Judy Sierra. Doesn't say by Judy Sierra, but she is the author. Then down under there it says illustrated by Will Hillenbrand. Illustrated is the illustrator who drew the pictures. Okay. So in this book, there were two different people. When there's only one name, like Dr. Seuss, he did both things, words and pictures. Now let's talk about one more thing here. This book was just a silly book. We really liked it, but it was silly. It's fiction, fake, not real, made up story. The author's purpose in a fiction is to entertain us, and that's what he did. This was very entertaining. It was funny, but it wasn't trying to teach us anything. If we had read a nonfiction, a real true book, which this is not, nonfiction tries to teach us things. Lots of times it has real pictures. Maybe it teaches us how to take care of a dog or about pigs or something like that. This was not a nonfiction. Some days we read nonfiction, and nonfiction is fun, but it does teach us things. This was purely to entertain us, and it was fiction. See you later.